Hello everyone for OneWrestling.com. This is Bill Apter. Welcome to the Apter Chat. You see me in my box, but our guest box is, well, it's a still photo, and that's because of the wonders of the internet. For some reason, our Skype recorder just isn't hooking up. For some reason, I just got a frog in my throat. Maybe that's because I'm talking to one of the toughest men in the world, Josh Barnett. Welcome down to Apter's Alley and the Apter Chat.
Even Skype can't keep a hold on me.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is. I just, it's not just about being able to throw a hold and stretch somebody. It's about being able to keep anybody from getting a hold on you as well. Yeah, well, I guess we're gonna have to try and work this out technically, and I don't want to throw this in here, but I'm gonna have to. But we have had Dan Severn on here, and I have a storied history with Dan Severn over the Cow Championship Office Wrestling belt, where he is a former champion. So once you see him, let him know that Skype froze for you, and you want to know why it worked for him. Yeah, I mean, we faced each other back in 2000.
Yeah.
In a shoot fight. Yeah, I've never had the pleasure to work a match with Dan, but I've been in the ring with him.
Tell us in terms of opponents. He's now a veteran, but back then, what did you learn from Dan Severn?
Oh, well, I mean, to begin with, Dan was a great example of wrestling being a bona fide martial art and applicable to combat. And then also, he showed that a professional wrestler doesn't necessarily have to be a guy that runs around and talks a big talk and walks a big walk, but can't really back anything up. He was a guy that he was an honest-to-goodness, for real, throwback professional wrestler. He could shoot, he could work, he knew the holds, he knew how to fight, and he went out there and he put on a great performance. Dan Severn is a exemplary version of what a professional wrestler can and should be.
Yeah. So let's go back. There are some fans watching this who don't know your background, and I wonder if you could, if we can impose on you to give kind of a capsule profile of how you got into both UFC and professional wrestling.
Well, I started fighting when I was 19 years old. Was my first bout. I'm 37 now, so I've been fighting for 16 years. I think I've been ranked in the top 10 in the world as a shoot fighter for perhaps even over 10 years now, without break. And I'm the youngest UFC heavyweight champion of the world, and the 10th King of Pancrase. I'm still the current King of Pancrase. And along my journey of MMA, which I always considered myself a professional wrestler. So it wasn't just a matter of going out and doing shoots in Pancrase and the UFC and things like that. But when I got my opportunity to go to Japan, I started off in New Japan Professional Wrestling, starting in 2002, and toured successfully with them for going on about 3 years, and helped develop me as a well-rounded wrestler, not just in the shoot ring, but in the worked ring, and also become just a better overall wrestler, no matter what the environment may be.
What is it different? And I'm sure you've talked to and been with a zillion pro wrestlers that were trained here in the United States. What is it about the mentality in the Japan dojos that teaches you so differently in Japan?
Well, the thing about being a dojo student in Japan is that you're not just being taught how to bump and do holds and throw people and what I think perhaps a lot of American schools. I mean, I couldn't give you the rundown on every American school, but I'm assuming that, and from what training I have seen, a lot of American schools emphasize just the movement and the ebb and flow. And in Japan, they start you off with very rigorous physical training and a lot of shoot training. They just teach you what it's like to really wrestle people, to really use holds, to know how to apply these things in a 100% unscripted environment. Then when you go out there and you want to go ahead and put together a match, you have a much better idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve, because whether people want to admit it or not, what people want to watch when they see pro wrestling is a contest between two people struggling to try and overcome the other.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fight between two tough guys, or four tough guys or gals or whoever, but it's a fight, and that's what people want to see. And so it's tough to show people what a real physical contest looks like between someone if you yourself have no idea what a physical contest actually is.
Sure, sure. So now you've been one of the people to introduce New Japan Pro Wrestling to fans here in the United States via AXS TV. You and Mauro Ranello as the commentators there. Let's first say find out, how did you get that gig?
I think that, well, hopefully I just happened to be the first person that they came across. They filed me under Barnett instead of Josh, so they just dialed off the top of the Rolodex and hit me first. But I'd like to think that what it came down to was that of my previous experience of not only being a professional wrestler, but training some of the people and working alongside and touring with these guys day in and day out when I was over there in Japan, and my current occupation of wrestling with the IGF, and just my notoriety through the MMA circles, and my catch wrestling background, training under Bill Robinson, Matt Hume, Eric Paulson, and even a little bit under Carl Gotch.
Yes. Now the show has a totally different feel and totally different look than anything a lot of the fans in the United States have seen before. I've been to Japan many times, so I saw this and I was like, wow, this is great. Can watch it in my living room right now. But what is it about this program that you think will enthrall the general public to come back week after week?
I think the wrestling stands out. No matter, you could have nothing but silence and just let the audio go, no commentary whatsoever, and I think people will watch that and be pretty wowed by what they see. Hard hitting, very tight, very high paced, and moves that you're not going to see done most places, especially on say in WWE. It's just a much tighter, harder hitting type of wrestling. But I think the other thing about it is that Mauro and myself, we treat it as legit. We treat it like a real sport. We want to try and give people a psychology foundation, everything. Why would he do that right now? Why is he doing this?
Yeah.
I want to try and get people into the mood of really caring about what's happening. And part of the way that I feel is best to do that is to talk to the people as if everything matters, because it really does in the end, and to try and fill them in on why this is important and why that's important. And
sure.
You just see some guys throwing a couple punches back and forth. If I can add this little bit, hey, I've actually worked with this guy in the gym before. I've trained him in some boxing. He's actually got a very heavy left hand. So every time you see him land those left body shots, it makes it that much more important to the person watching.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, when I watched it and closed my eyes for a second or two, it sounded like two good old fight commentators there. Like you said, it sounded like you do it as if it's a sport, which is the way we covered it in the wrestling magazines all those years. So yeah, very appreciated. Two people known in the wrestling business, Brian Regal and Randy Helms, have come up with some questions that they said, you're talking to Josh Barnett, could you ask him these questions? So yeah, that's what I'd like to do. Brian Regal asked, with the recent shows on AXS TV now, do you see a market for New Japan here in the United States in terms of live touring shows?
Well, if that's a possibility, we have to start somewhere. And with these shows being shown on AXS and giving the access, if you want to, for lack
I
of
like
better,
that. I like the play on words there.
to the rest of the world, or I should say at least to the American public, to see this product, build that fan base up, and then more and more people are going to say, oh, are they going to come to town? When are we going to get a chance to watch this live?
It starts
And
a fever. Yeah.
of course. And,
Yeah.
maybe not this year, but hey, maybe next year, maybe the year after. I think there's a potential. I think there's a very strong potential for New Japan to do some dates in the U.S. Now, if you're living out in the middle of Nowheresville, Arkansas, it may be tough to try and get New Japan to come to.
It's not a market for New Japan there.
Well, it's just that I think that the first place we may see it is definitely going to be the big cities, likely on the West Coast. But I tell you what, a ticket.
Wait, Philly's right in line here. Everybody keeps talking to me about how they want to see it.
A plane ticket from Nowheresville, Arkansas, to Dallas.
I would try. I would take a trip. They gonna have that Japanese wrestling here tonight.
Sure enough.
I'll go see that.
Everybody understands a good fight.
Yeah, they do. Are there any current New Japan Junior heavyweights that can break out of the juniors and become a main event level guy? Have you seen?
Yeah. It's hard to always to look and see who is going to be the one to come out on top, because it's not just a matter of being a junior and then just advancing into the ranks and taking on the heavier weight guys. In Japan, it's a necessity that you're going to have to actually physically change and become a heavyweight yourself. At the moment, I'm not entirely sure, but Ibushi might have the potential to do that, although technically he's a DDT guy. But we'll see. Give it some time. Maybe Taguchi will be the next one to make that transition, like his other classmate Goto did before him.
Do you have a New Japan Pro Wrestling favorite match of all time yet?
Billy Robinson versus Antonio Inoki.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What about you though? What your favorite match and when you competed in New Japan?
Hard to say. I had some good ones with Mitsuya Nagai. We had some great stuff together. Scott Norton. That was a pretty fun time.
Tough guy, yeah.
Tag match. Me and Izuka versus Kazunari and Shibata, and that was at a dome show, and they were doing for the opening all the bouts prior to the main events. They did a fan voted deal in the arena where you could text and say, what was your approval rating of these matches, and our match got 94%.
That's amazing.
We got everybody. So
that's amazing.
Surprisingly so, but we really brought it to those two, and it's funny because I know Izuka he's a little bit off the right path, and he's got this very menacing aspect to wrestling now.
Yes.
But he was a tag partner of mine for quite a bit. We never lost a match.
Wow. What are your stats, by the way? What's your height and weight?
6'3", anywhere between 245 to 255 usually.
Okay. Depending on what you're eating that day?
Or how much I'm lifting. Yeah, could be.
Okay. All right. Let's go to a couple of questions from Randy Helms. He says, is there one thing in your training that you're trying to get stronger? Ground, pound, strikes, kicks, etc.?
I spend a lot of time trying to improve on all aspects as much as possible. And what I'll do is piece by piece is I'll break something down and start working on that. At the moment, I'm doing some work in terms of my kicking, but certain aspects of it. Maybe if I'm not as happy with a one kick versus the others, or I'll spend some time just focusing on my right hand, or I'll focus on how can I get inside on somebody and land my short left hook, or how to punch inside something or work. So it really becomes very specific for me at this point. Okay. But always I'm trying to improve, always trying to add just another tool, another weapon to the arsenal.
Of course. Okay, you got to be unpredictable.
That's true. I don't want to be the kind of guy that if you say, oh well, if he does A and B, you always know he's going to do C next.
Okay. All right. You were talking about tag teams and tag team partners before. You teamed with, and Randy Helms brought this up, you teamed with Perry Saturn.
I did.
Once in a while. And what was that like? And are you still in touch with Perry?
I haven't talked to Perry in quite some time, but teaming with Perry Saturn was awesome, and it was a great decision by the office to have him, the veteran, to help me out, the rookie. Although I wasn't a straight rookie green boy like they might say, like a lot of guys, because I'd had so much experience on the mat, wrestling, freestyle, Greco, folk style, fighting. You know, I wasn't some guy that didn't know his a wrist lock from a wristwatch. Different story. But I did need help in working in New Japan and learning different things. And Perry was fantastic, and he had such an open mind to learn from me at the same time. And
a great guy.
Had a great experience working with him.
I actually helped him get into the business because he wrote me a letter back at the old days of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the Wrestler and Inside Wrestling, and he was Killer Kowalski's school at that time, and I helped funnel him to some of the promoters. Terrific guy. Lost touch with him, helped him with another comeback a few years ago, and then lost track of him again. He's a wandering soul. So if you're watching this, Perry Saturn, get in touch with one of us. All right. We're talking about UFC, and of course Randy Helms mentioned this, and tons of fans mentioning this. CM Punk about to make his debut in the world of MMA. Tell us about your feelings about this.
I think that what the heart wants, the heart wants. He wants to go out there and he wants to test his mettle. He wants to go into the shooting environment and go straight up with someone, and that's great because honestly, he could do his shoot fighting, finish up with that at some point, maybe retire from that, and he could still go back to wrestling if he really wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, of course, huge demand.
But you only have so long to do anything of athletic nature in your life, and to what level. And shoot fighting is going to take the absolute most that he has ever needed to draw from, more than wrestling has, at least for an individual match. And the preparation, it's going to be the highest level of training he's ever put himself through, and it's going to be the highest level needed for his body to act and react for himself. Because you can miss a move in a match, you can do what have you, but that you can work around that. You miss a move in the cage and someone plants a knee right in your mush, and that's night's over. So he's well aware with the what's up at risk and what's at stake when he gets out there. But I think it's great that he's going to do this, because if you've got something in you that says, hey, I want to do this, you just got to go out and do it. You got to make the most of it. You got to take your opportunities when you can. And I don't see it as a gimmick or a ploy. I see it as he wants to see what happens, and when lose the draw, he's going to go for it. Sure.
Okay, so before we leave now, and I want to thank Brian Regal and Randy Helms for some of their questions too. AXS TV is where you can see New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Nights.
Yeah, Friday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern time, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it's great. Right now is the best time in the world to be a wrestling fan. So many great promotions out there, and now New Japan out there too. You can watch wrestling 24/7, anywhere you want. And I want to thank you and Mauro, of course, for making this very intelligent, both of you, to give us fans your intelligence on the matches there, and how easy it is to understand and become excited with the way the two of you do your commentary.
Yeah, well, we feed off of each other. We both have the aspects to the way we call the matches, and also our own personal knowledge of the wrestlers and the matches themselves. And we just bounce things off one another.
That's great. It's perfect. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you speak Japanese?
I do, but not fluently, and it really fluctuates because I lived there for a few years, and then I've been going back and forth so consistently for a while it was fair. It was okay. And at this point, I hardly ever get to use it now. So I'll head over for something, and maybe by the end of a week, it starts to become a bit easier for me, for the very least, for understanding if someone's asking me questions and what have you. And then a little more time, then my responses get a bit more complex and better than, say, a 3-year-old's. But
All right.
it's there. I just need to flex the
Well,
muscle.
I know you'll understand these 2 words. Domo arigato,
Ah,
Mr.
kochira
Barnett.
koso. Kochira koso.